This morning, the humanitarian crisis in Texas is accelerating. Millions still without power or water. Hospitals around the state pushed to their brink, and the death toll is rising.
Senator Ted Cruz made time for a family vacation in the middle of our state's historic winter storm.
The images were everywhere today, showing the Texas senator with his family boarding that flight to Mexico.
This is inexcusable, and Texas should be outraged.
Woo, okay, well, that is an ad from the Lose Cruz PAC, and I'm sure they feel like that's a really good attack against Ted Cruz, but the issue is the heat wave that he was running from was like a year ago. Clearly, Texas is never gonna experience a heat wave like that again, so it's hardly gonna be a topical thing. Of course, Texas is baking right now with once again a lethal heat wave. And so being reminded that their senator just fled to go have fun, drink a pina colada, relax in the ocean, that might hurt him. Now we're going to remind you of a few other elements of that.
I just want to correct one thing real quick, John. He actually fled during the polar vortex, so we were freezing in Texas, and that's
sorry. I apologize. I have to remember that you guys are either in one of those two states at any particular time.
Yeah, it's fine.
February 2021 winter storm is what he was fleeing then. Soon, I'm sure he'll be fleeing the heat as well. So look, the general issue is that Texas is not prepared for extremes of weather. Whether they come in the form of winter storms or they come in the form of heat waves, people die. And they will continue to die if that's what brings corporate profits. And since it does, and that's who pays politicians like Ted Cruz, he's not gonna do anything. And the fact that he fled, that he went to Cancun or whatever, that's like kind of like the spit in the eye. But what he doesn't do, which is push for any sort of regulation, any change, any evolution to the way Texas manages its power grid or helps those who are potentially vulnerable in times of heat or cold, that's the big issue. And that's why, like, it's a good ad visually. It makes him look callous and it makes him look like a joke and everything, but it's a reminder of an incredibly serious ongoing problem.
I will say, first of all, I feel like every time I come on one of these shows, you guys try to trigger me with like footage of Ted Cruz. So thank you for that. But I will say there is some level of brilliance to the ad, because if you talk to a lot of people who don't like Ted Cruz, that comes up. They call him, what do they call him? Fled Cruz or something, right?
Yeah,
he fled, right? Cruz. It was like emotionally offensive to Texans that he did that. Of course, there's a bigger issue as to, our whole power grid and how the oil and gas industry won't really let us fix it, and how our governor is blaming all of the issues with our power grid on the windmills of all things. So there's actual issues that need to be discussed, but I think that thing about Ted Cruz fleeing to Cancun, it really does hit at the emotions of a lot of Texans. That was, I don't think that I'm overselling it to say that it was like a traumatic event for a lot of people living in the state at the time. And I think people outside of Texas really don't understand what it was like going through something like that. We are not equipped for cold weather. We're not prepared for it. We don't have the resources to deal with it. But something like what happened in February 2021 still should not have happened, right? We still should have been able to keep our heat on inside of our homes. And our government didn't really do a whole lot about it during or after the fact. And 2 years later, they still haven't really done a whole lot to fix the power grid. So it is an ongoing issue. It does need to be talked about, but the emotions are still, I think, more fresh than I would even expect them to be. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, and look, I understand it on a primal level. Like when you think about most politicians obviously are terrible and do nothing. But what's like the one thing they know they're supposed to do? When there's a disaster, you go there. You go there and you probably do nothing. You probably accomplish nothing. You walk through a flooded street or you stand on the beach when there's a hurricane. It doesn't necessarily accomplish much, but it at least tells the community that you're in it with them, that you feel their pain or at least are close to their pain.
Yeah, no, Ted couldn't even be bothered to do that much. He wouldn't do that, but he did do stuff. Was Beto O'Rourke, who at the time was, I don't even think he held a public position at that point. And AOC came down here and she did more stuff than Ted Cruz did. And then Ted Cruz went to Florida and he made fun of all the Texans who were freezing. So He's just the worst. And his dog's name is Snowflake, and he left the dog at home. Oh my God, what a disaster.
That's another one of those primal things that'll hit people. Now, that said, we're pointing out why I think a lot of people have a problem with this. If you don't recall, he did have a reason for going to Cancun. Take a look.
Well, Texas is going through horrific storms, and millions of Texans have lost power and lost heat and have been hurt. And our family was among them. We had no heat and no power. And yesterday, my daughters asked if they could take a trip with some friends, and Heidi and I agreed, so I flew down with them last night, dropped them off here, and now I'm headed back to Texas.
Yeah, I don't know that that necessarily helps. I mean, he acknowledged the storms are bad, which is true. That's good. That means that at least while he was in Cancun, he Googled what was going on. So that's nice. But a reminder that what you fled was horrendous is also not great for you, because again, you fled it and you can't change that. And then to try to throw your family under the winter storm or whatever. I don't think a lot of people are gonna love that too. All of this is just, it is like the perfect encapsulation of the issue people have with slimy politicians who don't give a damn what happens to their constituents.
Yeah, and he lied and he tried to blame it on his daughters, which is really, really low. And then the best part of this whole saga, John, was that we actually got leaked text messages from his wife's, friend group. So somebody in his wife's friend group is the one who leaked this to the media, which is my favorite part of this whole story. And they were the ones planning the trip. They wanted to go, and then he had the audacity to blame it on his daughters. Like, he sucks. He's the worst.
Yeah, I can only imagine after all of this, what other messages were going around in his wife's friends group message. Probably not positive stuff for him. In any event, reminder, if you live in Texas and you're disgusted by what you just saw, you don't have to see it for that much longer. You can boot his butt out of the seat.
For more political news breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/The Damage Report. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.